Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 23 Talking Horses, presented by our good friends at Saratoga Water, Sarah Obadwi and Andy Serling, on a glorious day here in Saratoga. And I want to clear up a couple of things right away. Happy belated birthday. It was Sarah's birthday yesterday. I would sing, but then you would even turn off the channel even earlier than you normally do. And apparently, in forgetting Sarah's birthday, we also forgot Irad's birthday.
Well, he wasn't here, so.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, I said you first. I don't want to suggest that he's more important to me than you are, but
well, thank
it
you.
is Irad, and, you know, we want to say happy birthday to him as well, and he's back today as well. But Sarah, happy birthday. I hope you had a nice birthday.
It was all right, yeah.
Good. Okay,
nice.
that's it? You know,
well, I mean,
no details? You want to?
No, it was nice being
call.
here. I've come here on many birthdays, and it was nice to be working now here on a birthday as well. So it was a beautiful day out. It was nice. I mean,
I don't think I've ever had a birthday
quiet
where it wasn't at racing at Belmont, and sometimes it falls in Belmont Stakes where I wasn't at Belmont.
Right.
There may have been some that were sadly Mondays and Tuesdays. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about, so let's go over to NYRA Bets. If you're not a member of NYRA Bets, use the promo code SPA200, and we will match for $200 of your initial deposit. Play through NYRA Bets. Keep the money in the game. We have a middle pick 4 today, which I'm guessing in our 11 race cards, and race number 5. So 2, 5, and 8 for the pick 4s. Pick 5s in races 1, 4, and 7 as well. That deep breath is there to move on. That was a cue. Thank you. I do want to thank everybody in the truck, and that means everybody in the truck that does such an incredible job in bringing these shows to you, whether it's Talking Horses, the simulcast, or the daily show, Saratoga Live as well. A lot of people that get very little credit do most of the work around here, and we thank every one of them, except for you, Kaka. You, not so sure. You've been around so long. You like furniture like me. You know, we've been around so long. Cross Country Pick 5, 3 at Colonial, and that's sort of the Arlington Million. Should we call it the Colonial Million?
I think that's more fitting now,
yeah,
right?
I'm going to call it or we'll remember Arlington, but you know, whatever. That'll be a Cross Country Pick 5. We have the $1 million bonus, Saturdays and Sundays, single ticket winner, and a special reason to play, of course, today as well. You want to play it through NYRA Bets. I know it's a huge long shot, but can you imagine being the only one, as one gentleman was alive, or gentlewoman, I should say, was alive a couple weeks ago for the whole pool in the last race and had played through NYRA Bets. So you want to play that through NYRA Bets on the weekends. You really want to play it every day as well. But today, we've seeded the late pick 5 with $100,000, $100,000 total. That's being added to the pool and the payoffs at the end. And this is obviously in relation to the situation that happened last week. And we hope that people understand that we take those things very, very seriously. And this is our way of saying thank you to our fans that are so loyal and stick through it with us through thick and thin. So thank you very much. And I know I speak for Sarah and really everybody at NYRA when I express that sentiment. We have the Taste of New York Pavilion, located near Gate A in the Berkshire Bank Family Zone, every Thursday through Sunday. Sarah, you had your 21st birthday yesterday, so you were able to go there and drink. Is that what happened?
I do still get carded from time to time.
I kid. She's actually still 20. It's my story, and that's the story. We're sticking with it. I am 24, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, last year they said Last year they had me at 72 on the show.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
You've time traveled into the future.
I felt a little heartened when people said, "Really, he doesn't seem 72," and I wasn't. Anyway, what else?
Wise enough, though.
It was something about a picture and the wrong date and all this stuff. You know, it was back when.
If you're 72, then I'll take 20.
Younger, thinner, hair, the whole thing. You know, I had it all, and now I have you. 1 to 3 and 6 to 7 today on FS1, covering that action. Of course, 3 to 6 as well, covering all the coverage on Fox. The 4-Star Dave being the big race today, and we all love 4-Star Dave. Anyway, race number uno. So there's Tall Paul. Do we know who Tall Paul is? There's got to be a Tall Paul,
Named
right?
after Paul LaDuca?
Yeah, no. Paulie's not much taller than I am. So contrary to, you know, and nobody calls him short. You notice that?
Yeah, it's
well,
just
he's not short. No, I'm really not that short
kind
either.
Of, you know, average
you know,
build.
If you get older, it's better being
if
short.
I get older,
fit into theater.
If I make it.
We're hoping. We're rooting for that. It's easier to fit into seats. It's all these things. Let's take a look at Del Mar. Who knew we'd have a Del Mar star in the maiden race? This is a New York bred, guys. What are you doing here? In fact, bred by Jeff Treadway as well. You know, Sarah, this horse may well win.
Weren't you a
Don't
little
you just
disappointed?
want to bet against him?
Yeah.
You feel like, look, he's 3 to 5 right now.
I know.
It's really that good?
I mean, he showed some good early speed, and this is clearly a tougher group. This was open company. He's a New York bred. He's getting against the state breds. He just barely holds on for third over the very highly touted Miramati, who one of Frank's best calls, in my opinion, just because how fun it was Miramati's debut when he goes, Miramati, second best.
I just want to say thank God that Frank has not been as disappointing as the horse that's named for him. Frank's been lighting it up here. I don't want to jinx him. He's got a ways to go, but I think that Frank is
strong
and
first half,
speak for
sure.
everybody when we appreciate everything Frank's been doing here and calling. But yeah, so I just wasn't thrilled.
Yeah.
My worry with your horse is there's an old saying in racing, there are no trips in slow races, and that's what worries me about your horse. But have at it.
Yeah, I mean, look, this horse will obviously need to take a big step forward second time out in terms of the number that this race got, because it was a very slow figure kind of race in terms of buyers.
It was a slow race.
Well,
they're usually correlated.
It makes some sense, doesn't it?
Right, it does.
But this horse just made up so much ground. And it's not that the horse broke very slowly. It's that the horse kind of veered in towards the rail and then was taken back a little bit, ended up just making up so much ground in the later stages of that race and made a really huge move around the turn to ultimately end up finishing second with the natural progression and another step forward. I just like that this one shown that can make up some ground, pick up some pieces, and do a little bit of running versus some other horses that I think will be forwardly placed, and then, of course, the unknowns with the first-time starters.
Usually they're a little more impressive. Really made up all the ground the stretch, to be honest with you, and got a good ride from Jose. Saved ground, angled out smilingly on the turn, but mostly saved ground and angled out, and just sort of took herself out of the race and himself out. And I get it. Listen, I considered putting him on top at one point and ended up leaving him out because I'm just afraid the race was slow, and I never do it, so this one I'll jinx. I usually don't default to the Todd Pletcher first-time starters, but I thought in this particular case, this horse has a half to Curlin's Wisdom was pretty good. There's some pedigree there, and Into Mischief, and I thought this one's not going to be favored. Baffer's going to be favored, so this time I'll take the Pletcher one, and of course this time it'll probably run poorly, and they had a nice-looking firster yesterday. Well, for the same connection. I think it was maybe just Mike Rapoli that won that New York bred race. Thought ran very well in there. But I went to this one in here. You know what's funny with Larry Ravelli? If you don't look up stats, and you've left this horse out, the 7 Gucci Man, who has no real pedigree, you would think, oh, Larry Ravelli is shipping in here. He's incredibly dangerous with firsters, right? So I looked him up for the one in the 6th race who, and first-time stars in dirt sprints, he's never run one at NYRA. He's 14 for 77, 18% and $1.13 ROI. So as many fast horses as he has and good horses, he doesn't really win with a lot of them.
Yeah, there just wasn't a lot for me to recommend other than the fact that it's Larry Ravelli and he is coming in here, and the last work, albeit at Hawthorne, was decent. But back to your horse in the number 8, doesn't it bother you a little bit? This horse was working at Belmont most recently. No. That was working up at Saratoga up until the 26th of June. Then there's a little bit of a gap for another month. It's just kind of an odd move.
Well, same thing happened with Christophe Clément's maiden that ran so well, the horse of the Acacia name the other day. And I try not to worry about things that I don't know why they're happening. And I think also they'll have somewhat limited stall space up here. I know there's different places, they have horses, but I also, and I don't know this, but it's also very possible that Todd said, you know, this horse is a couple weeks from a race or a week and a half from a race. He knew this race was in the book. He was probably pointing to it and said, let's get him back down to Belmont and let's get another horse in his stall that's more ready to run. Yeah. That's, I think, a real possibility. And you know, it's like people used to say about Chad Brown, oh, he's at reinvestment risk. Oh, he's at Monmouth. And then they realized, you know, he's running those firsters at Tampa. Yep. They must suck. No, in fact, a lot of them became Grade 1 winners.
Right.
And I think it's hard. That's for me. I try not to get overly involved in things I just don't know the answer to.
Yeah, I think for me it's just more that there's a gap in time that's about a month long. But
Apollo Code, who you have 3rd and I have 3rd, you probably wanted to be wide that day at Monmouth, but this horse was hurted quite badly.
He was, and they eventually end up straightening up and going towards the rail in the later stages of this race, but showed some good early speed towards the outside and does, I agree with you, get pushed out in the around the turn of that race. So I think this one is just another one that's very logical. Has shown that they can be forwardly placed as well.
And the Dam was originally a Mike Dubb horse, Run a Dub Dub. I don't know if that's before your time. Wasn't that long ago? Well, it wasn't that long. It might be a little before your time.
Well, if I'm 20, then.
Right, exactly. Still not before you were born, but
right.
Closer. So a big scratch in race number 2 with Glacial Power coming out, a horse who actually ran well and had a real trip. I'm not going to try. I know you were. I think you went 8-7 here, and I think did you have the 8 on top or you 7? I don't know. Ocean Mermaid. Why are we supposed to bet against this horse?
I don't know. I mean, this is a horse that finished 2nd to Crimson Advocate. We saw that one go over to Ascot and win the Queen Mary. So, I mean, this is a horse that's just extremely logical of facing males, but I don't really see that being much of a problem in here.
Wesley, who says much of a problem for them? Are you suggesting that women are inferior to men here, Sarah?
No, I would
I'm
never.
kidding. I
Come
kid.
on.
Wesley Ward does this a lot also.
He does, yes.
And with the 2-year-olds, the feeling is sometimes the females are more precocious, actually, than males. We certainly saw, I don't know, I'm not sure the best 2 performances we haven't seen from a 2-year-old meet, though that race last week where Wayne Lucas just beat Todd, that first year, that was a very, very fast race. But I think between Ways and Means and the winner, Bright, well, I'm not good with
The one
names.
that won the Adirondack?
Those 2 horses are serious racehorses.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
I'd love to find somebody else, but I just really couldn't. I mean,
yeah, and they're first-time stars. And briefly through the pedigrees here, I don't think there was a lot. The dam of All About Tonight was fairly good, so there's some pedigree there. But it's not like a pages that are screaming pedigrees, right?
right.
What about Brian Lynch? I have Brian Lynch second. First-time stars, the turf, 5 to 6.5 furlongs, 5 for 28, 235 ROI. 2-year-olds, 3 for 17. I think this is Brian's. Oh, it's his second starter at the meet.
Yeah.
I miss seeing Brian around here. Good guy.
Yeah, this one has a little bit of pedigree on the dam
Kingman.
side as well. I mean, the dam's a 3-time winner. She's 5 for 8 in the money on turf. I mean, this one's a half to a 3-time winner in Wide West, who's a turf and synthetic sprinter. So.
And a Kingman to boot. Love
Yeah.
the Kingman. So King Julian
A
would be
boot
there.
from you?
So what's that?
A to boot from you and not Maggie? I feel like that's kind of her catchphrase.
Maggie inadvertently once stole a terrible phrase. I would say surely. I think it was certainly. And you develop on television and you don't even know it. Words you use to delay your brain while you're searching for the next thing to say.
Yes.
And I was trying to stop myself from doing it. I had seen that I was doing it, and then Maggie picked it up, and I had called her and I said, it's like a disease going around, and you picked it up, and she quickly stopped. And I'm assuming that he's named for Julian Leperoux. I'd like to think that King Julian is, I didn't know that he was a king, but apparently, Julian, you're royalty. So good luck today. Race number 3. You know how it goes, they name horses for people. Usually not well. Saferdata and Mersal. I'm doing what I tell people not to do. I bet Mersal in this race at 19 to 1 last time, and now I'm going to take a small fraction of that price. But I thought she ran super in here, and I'm not trying to beat her.
And wasn't she the one that was sitting the closest to a pace that falls apart in the later stages of the race, whereas Saferdata was benefited by those fast fractions to close into and does make up ground in the later stages? We saw a horse like Into Happiness come back and win again just the other day. So
boy, she gotten good, huh?
Right? Kind of out of nowhere, but really improved lately. And I just felt as though she was the one that was the least benefited by the dynamics of this race and figures to sit off some pace in here. And she also can be a little bit more tactical. She doesn't have to be that forward as she was in that race. She's come from further back in the past.
No, I agree. And the other thing is she's got 2 wins in her last 3 starts, albeit against somewhat mediocre fields, but she's improving. And Saferdata, I mean, she's now got 5 straight seconds, and the last 2 at relatively short prices. I'm just a little sick of her. And I'm wondering, so Freudian is 5 to 2 in here. I guess that makes sense. Dropping a little bit, I don't know, I guess is okay. Nah, I can see that. I didn't love this
She really
horse.
climbed through all the conditions earlier, and then they put her on turf, and then she was facing tough company last time, so she makes some sense. But aside from her last out by her speed figure of a 78, the rest of her numbers on dirt don't necessarily make her so much of a shorter price than the rest of this field.
And she gets a big time form US number after getting sort of mediocre ones, those 2 races at Aqueduct. And I'm always a little bit suspicious. I'm not saying that something nefarious was going on, but when the number jumps to a different track outside of NYRA. And I look at the NYRA races, and it's like we see horses that come from out of town. If they ever run at the NYRA tracks, if they ever run well here, because sometimes it's difficult. And the Freudian, I think, that was running here in April and March, I don't like her against these. The one that ran last time might be the horse to beat, but which one are we going to see?
Right. That's
Anybody
a fair
else?
point.
I don't like Jolly Miss Jill. Sorry, Linda. I just thought that this is a much tougher field than the one she faced.
I mean, Icy Reply is a little bit interesting. She can be forwardly placed, and it's probably the speed of the speed, but she's stretching out, and she's also one that just really has the propensity to finish second.
Isn't Torres going to send Jolly Miss Jill? I mean, she did so well being aggressive last time.
Isn't Yogi from the outside going to go as well? I mean, looks like there could be some speed in here.
Yeah, I mean, there's never any speed here. Don't even suggest it. Race number 4.
Looks like.
We'll break after 6 on our 11 race card today, if that's okay with you guys. I don't think there's any denying that One Giant Leap is way the horse to beat in this race. I don't know, Sarah. I just didn't want to put him on top, but I'm probably crazy. It's even a legit race he comes out of. I don't have a knock on him.
No, and I mean, of course, when you look at the 2-time voided claim and then the steady drop in class for him, it's a little bit questionable as to what kind of performance we're going to see, but this is a horse that just has the best numbers, has shown progressive improvement even with those drops in class. And this is a horse for Wesley Ward that can also come from off the pace, even though he has so much speed in most of his horses he trains. So there's a lot to like about this one. I, like you, just couldn't put him first either. There's just a little bit of a question mark with him.
Yeah, he comes from dead last. On the pace projector, he's last. And he's a short price coming from last. But you are going to have to enlighten me about 2 Cent Town.
I know this is a horse that won at Finger Lakes last time out, and that form doesn't necessarily always translate over to our circuit, but he showed a lot of precocity as a 2-year-old early on against State Breds, then won as a 3-year-old versus older company. I think that he ends up being your outside speed today, and I like that Dylan Davis has been more aggressive lately with the horses that he's been on. I know that he needs to get a little bit faster against some of these, but they're a little bit...
A lot. Go ahead. I wouldn't say he needs to get a little faster.
I know. But there's a little bit of suspicion around some of the shorter priced horses in here. And I just feel as though he's one that could benefit from the kind of trip that he's likely to get from the outside, even though he has to get a little bit better.
Okay, I didn't see it, but there are a lot of winners that anybody at the racetrack doesn't see. My alternative was the One Dangerous Ride in here, who ran in a much, much tougher spot last time. And also, he was between horses with Prove Right, who was astronomically better than everybody in the field and was sitting on his outside. And so he gave in. Did he give in that badly? Not really. I don't think he ran that badly. And, you know, I had considered him a lot in his last race before finally dismissing him because he's a tough one to read. He's run some good races. He's run some lousy races. And you've left him out and totally understand that. But I thought this was a real drop for him. And the blinkers off move, for what it's worth, blinkers off on the dirt for Carlos David. He's 4 for 16, 344 ROI. So he's done well with the blinkers off. I like blinkers off moves. I don't like blinkers on. I prefer blinkers off moves. So I thought maybe he just found himself in a better spot, so he was my alternative. I really couldn't come up with a particularly good other one. I guess Commerce Comet ran well in Indiana last time, but what about the rest of his races?
Exactly, and I thought that my main argument for the horse that I like a little bit in 10 Cent Town, if you take away Commerce Comet's last race, don't they look pretty similar?
Yes, they do. Except, I would say with Commerce Comet, well, I don't know. It's his last race is good.
Yes.
He has that race. The other horse doesn't have that race. So at the very least, he has it. I wanted to make a case for Gabe because I love the job Antonio Arriaga does off the claim. I just don't know where his race is. It's good enough, and I'm not going to trust him off a big race at Belterra, but I do respect Antonio Arriaga, so I would probably throw him in somewhere. This is a race that will probably be won by One Giant Leap, but there are other cases to be made for other horses. Race number 5, 7 furlongs. I think it's our first 7-furlong 2-year-old race. By the way, speaking of which, there were some terrific performances yesterday, but shouldn't be lost the Mark Hennig horse, Timely
Conquest
in the second race.
Getting on a fast track for the first time.
Dueling for the lead.
Incredibly impressive.
I mean, fast pace, dueling for the lead on the inside and drawing off. I mean, that race was, I didn't look up the numbers, but that race was reasonably comparable to some pretty good horses later in the card. So that's a good horse.
I think that's an exciting horse to look forward to because that's one that we talked about really resented the kickback first time out and still kind of fought through
Shockingly
it.
mature in his first start.
Right.
And as it turns out, he probably didn't really love a wet track.
Right.
I don't think he hated it. I just don't think he excelled in it.
No, I think we saw a much better
I meant to look up what figure he got yesterday because that was a substantial performance by him in the second race. So anyway, there's stories abound, and you've fallen into the Lee Einseidler trap.
Oh, have I?
Lee chastised me before the day started. Where are your picks? I have to block that guy on my phone. It's a nuisance. So Reynolds Channel, after Hot Fudge.
Yeah,
Lee loves him, in case you're wondering.
Oh, does he?
Loves him.
Yeah, he gave me a little bit of a tip on this horse.
Don't get excited.
Just me.
He gives everyone a big tip on every horse he has.
I know. He mentioned this one a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure that he's told the rest of the world as well, but seems like they're very high on this horse, as they are about many of their horses, and they have the right to be. With many of them, especially Casa Creed later on today, but this is one that Hot Fudge was a little bit more precocious than I think we kind of remember because she's been so good lately.
Gotten better lately, but she was always had some ability.
Yeah, and I mean, she won her first start on dirt, which was her second start overall.
A funny trip.
She ran in the Frizette against Echo Zulu. She wasn't going to win that race. So I just feel as though there's a little bit of an implication that this horse could be okay based on the win early type of pedigree in there. And Mott's been doing so well.
It's a lot to pay for a West Coast. $300,000 stands for $10,000. I love when people come outside the set and start yelling. So the one is Eliminate for Todd Pletcher. I feel like somebody told me thought this horse is a runner, has some good works. Why wouldn't it be? The Dam was pretty good. She ran a 91 buyer. Her produce has been the first 2 foals not that good, but a Curlin. Probably a runner.
Yeah, I mean, female family of Dortmund who wanted to go a little bit longer, so there's obviously some pedigree there. They paid a decent amount for this horse, and even with those things aside, as well as the connections, you look and you have a work that's the best of 101, you're dealing with a horse that's probably pretty talented.
Yeah, as so many of Todd's horses are in those connections. I picked Deterministic. I've heard this horse is a runner. This is a tip. I've heard this horse is a runner. This is not a tip from Lee. And it's not even from the connections, even though I'm friendly with one of the owners. I had heard they really like this horse. Now, whether or not they're going to be horse in this race the connections really like, that are pretty good, that are going to lose. This has a look of a good Saratoga maiden race, doesn't it?
It does.
Kind of exciting, actually. Anybody else we should mention? Wayne Lucas, the runner. His 2-year-olds are running great.
They are. I mean,
Gustavo
I guess.
Delgado.
Yeah, I guess Informed Patriot towards the outside. Full brother to Spun to Run.
Yeah, but sold for only $90,000. You know what Yawkey Way is? You know what Yawkey Way is.
No, tell me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's the street where Fenway is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a Klarovich horse. This horse, really, yeah, he was a Klarovich runner. He wasn't that good. He ran like a 76 buyer in general. But obviously, Spun to Run was very good. Won the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile and some big buyers. Anyway. I thought it was such a low price, though, for that pedigree.
Yeah, we've seen this happen quite a bit with some horses that have ended up being pretty good, and we've talked about it a little bit, that something might be showing up in terms of x-rays, or there might be something else going on that kind of dissuades people from paying these bigger purchase prices, even though there is that kind of pedigree, and sometimes it means a lot, but sometimes it doesn't mean anything, so we'll see.
That's why Jimmy Chapman has that really good sprinter, and Jenny Antonucci has
Arcangelo.
Arcangelo, and horses with, I mean, Arcangelo's pedigree's $1 million pedigree, and what it sold for $35,000.
Yeah, even a lesser type of horse, Confidence Game, related to Zenyatta, sold for much, much less than he could have. So
I saw John Sheriff the other night at the sale.
Did you really?
I love John. He's a great guy.
Nice.
Yeah, I think he's running his horse in the Travers.
Skinner?
Yeah.
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 Cool.
Yeah, it was nice to see him. I hadn't seen him in years. He's just a terrific man. It was really, really nice to see him. I'm waiting also for that good Steve Asmussen 2-year-old, right? It feels like, you know, we always expect, you come to almost take for granted, and it's hard. Everybody has a bit of an off year, and he hasn't had some good 2-year-olds. He's had some good ones out of town. But up here, he's done so well and had some important horses debut here. And this year, it hasn't been the same,
well,
but I'm waiting.
He had that one, but then the figure didn't come back quite as quick.
Right. Oh, yeah, the Wire at the Field. Yep.
Candy?
Yeah, Wire at the Field.
Yeah.
Good-looking field. Right, I agree. But it's just like every year he has some of the best
star.
2-year-olds,
Yes,
so you're sort of, you get spoiled by that. Race number 6. Well, I am extremely disappointed in race number 6 because the horse I wanted to bet on the most today was the number 8 Island Rose. And she's a vet scratch, so I should be glad that she's not running in that sense. But it took the wind out of my sails. And I guess at the end of the day, I don't want Foxy Cara. I know that she's run well for Mitch, and I always want to see Mitch do well. I don't know. I'm just a little dubious of her. She's had her chances.
She has, and she ends up being part of that entry as well, and you never want to necessarily take entries because she's a horse that she seems to show up with these kinds of really big performances that make you believe in her again against a horse like Ichiban, who's gone on to do some pretty good things for the Linda Rice barn, but then she occasionally throws in the performances that leave you a little bit wanting. So with some fresher faces in here and horses that have a little bit more upside, this is one that I had to take later down because the good races are there, but are they good enough to actually get the win today?
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of music going on in the pick horse that you picked.
Is there?
Well, of course there is.
Are you just being punny?
Well, where do you think Nay Jude comes from?
I know, I'm kidding.
Okay. Why is this horse named Nay Jude? Where is the dam's name come from?
Juju Eyeballs?
Where's it from?
Beatles?
Right, Come Together.
Yeah.
Who is this horse a half to?
I don't know, I didn't look.
November Rain.
Oh, okay.
It's all coming together.
Yeah, I guess so. Wasn't this horse entered not that long ago and ended up scratching?
Seems possible. It's the 3rd fall from the dam.
I don't know, there's a lot of precocity in the pedigree. Breen reaches out to Irad.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I will once I can
So what's
get
the
back
story
in
you got going here?
I don't have a big story. I mean, this was a horse that I liked when the horse was originally entered, and then coming back into this spot, I just think that the workouts are solid. There's some pedigree there to win early, and seems like a live type of horse.
Okay.
Not a big story.
I do love Come Together. It's a great song.
I
think
don't have a tip
the
like you do.
version of Come Together from John Lennon's appearance at Madison Square Garden is really one of the best ones, I think. You know why I didn't take this horse, honestly? Because it's a Union Rags going 6 furlongs first time out. That was kind of why. I just, November Rain is a street boss. I love Street Boss, and they're precocious and they're sprinters, and that was why I didn't. That's why I didn't take this horse, because obviously I looked, and that I thought maybe this was one that might not be ready.
But
listen, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
Yeah, listen. What I did was I changed my picks around, because I originally then I scratched into Richie's Princess, but I told you those Larry Ravelli stats, and this one's IRAD, and I figured this horse will take a ton of money,
and to be this short on the morning line, there has to be something.
Well,
going
IRAD
on.
too. Don't you think it's IRAD why David made this horse short?
Sure, but I mean, there has to be something a little bit more, doesn't there?
Shouldn't David have made the morning line at Colonial today?
I didn't look, so I can't comment.
Greg said to David we ran into David last night, Greg and I were having dinner, and Greg said to David, you should make the line for every track. And I looked at him like, that's just what he'd like to do.
Yeah, he has lots of free time.
It was a compliment. He meant it as a compliment. It was a deep compliment, actually.
No, that's a great compliment, but still.
This horse has pedigree, though. 4 of the 7 foals from the stand were good, so I'm not going to be surprised. I just hate going to first-time starters. I've got Horacio DePaz in there with Irish Crystal. The dam was good. I just love Horacio DePaz. I think he's a terrific trainer. His firsters, he doesn't win that. They're live, you know. And I thought I use him. But, Nolita comes out of the Timely Conquest race. Sort of the number 2 came out, the star, and sort of bumped her off a little bit. And so she had some trouble. And I thought she ran reasonably well, taking some money that day. And what I found interesting was they entered her back at 6 furlongs. That shows they must really think she's a sprinter. They didn't look to really stretch her. And maybe this race came up, but I thought maybe they looked to stretch out. So I'll take Nolita.
Yeah, I picked her second. I mean, after we saw what Timely Conquest did yesterday.
All righty, we'll take a break. Sarah and I will be right back, though.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
We're back. Sarah and Andy. Race 7, the Galway. I'll tell you one thing. There have been some stakes where we've struggled a little bit. This isn't one of them. This is a terrific race.
It is. Full field, very competitive, lots of directions to go in. And it pains my soul that I ended up with Love Reigns, but I did.
That what?
I ended up with Love Reigns,
Well, you picked Anna's Arabesque, and she scratched. They find our picks, don't they?
The horses, they sniff them out.
They find our picks like the 8 in the last race.
I don't feel like it today.
So let's look at Love Reigns in the Limestone, and I'll let you talk about her. And I agree with you. She's the horse to beat in here.
I mean, this is one that just has all the looks of being that type of Wesley Ward overbet favorite, Stone Street. But the kind of race that she ran in the Limestone, I feel as though it really elevates her, because we saw her deal with a little bit of traffic and overcome something instead of just being that speed type of horse. You can see her right now in the Stone Street Golden Yellow, have to wait for room, end up going towards the inside, and then angle out and dive through traffic only to get up at the very late stages of the race over the newly fellow Wesley Ward and Lady Hollywood and have that kind of explosive turn of foot once she did hit the spot.
I would call that determined.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that was a horse that was determined to win the race.
She could have stopped.
The race was definitely falling apart in certain ways at the end, and it benefited her, and she did get a sensational ride. That was Joelle. But she was really determined to get the win. I'll tell you the slight worry with her, and I've got her third, and I'm not against her, but she didn't go to Ascot. And I think she was kind of talked about going there. And Stone Street likes to go to Ascot, and I wondered about that a little bit, and we haven't seen her now for 4 months. And all those things, and listen, that was a very good race, and a race that probably wins here, but there are horses near there getting better. She's missed time. I know Wesley doesn't run him a lot, but This one should have been an Ascot if he really liked it, or something. Maybe she wasn't training well. Maybe she wasn't training well, and now she's training well.
Yeah.
You know, and he's not a guy who's afraid to scratch him and not run him. So I don't think he's running unless they're doing well. That bothered me, and it just made me want to go in a different direction. And the horse that we both have second in here, Love Appeals, I think it's important to watch this race, the Blue Sparkler, because it's weird trouble to quantify, right? Because she's in the back, right? She's the number one
She's the
here.
one, yep.
And it's sort of, she gets shuffled out behind the horse in pink, who actually ends up running second. But that horse sort of looks like she's backing up, and you can see that she's backed her out of the position she was in and backed her to the back of the field.
Right.
And while that horse, who was My Sweet Affair, comes back on, and My Sweet Affair is pretty good, she had really badly affected Love Appeals and taken her so much out of position. Yes, she hangs a little bit here, she lugs in a little bit, but she was also a victim in this race.
Well, she also didn't break that sharply. She was down towards
Yep.
the inside. So I think there was some trouble even before the point of the race where we picked it up to show it, because she was a little bit further back and already sort of out of position,
Fair.
even more so than she was
Fast-paced, but
there.
yeah.
Right. So I think that maybe in the later stages, if she gets a little bit tired, you don't hold it against her as much, because she did have to overcome something early in the stages of that
Also
race
off
as
a
well.
layoff. Also off almost a 3-month layoff. So
yeah, I
that
think she is
factored.
the one that you want furthest up the line out of that race.
Yeah,
would agree.
I do too. I think if you're taking from, you know, and it's competitive. I don't think the others are bad by any stretch of the imagination. Beauty of the Sea's been very good. And the pace is funny because it's not that much pace. And, you know, Stone Silence, I want to see her bring her act on the road in some tougher spots. But she's
Those
pretty
two
fast
have
and
been
she's
really
pretty
good.
good. I'm not wildly against her in here. You haven't used her. You've used Reflexivity, and we'll get to my choice in a minute. But I feel like Reflexivity found her field last time. I also think she's a better horse when she can be on more moderate paces. She's also a tricky horse because she's a bit of a runoff.
You don't think that this field that she faced when she won her maiden was actually a pretty good field?
Well, I think Love to Shop is very good. Now, I don't know. I haven't
know about
seen
the
her
rest?
since then. Well, I mean, Love to Shop, I think, may have run the best race that day, and that's why she had that impressive win at Belmont. It's the Todd Pletcher Mike Rapoli horse, I think.
Yep.
I don't think she's run since that race because there was no pace in here. And this was a horse I had a conversation with Chad Brown about because I liked her a lot more than he did. Mm-hmm. And he said, why do you like her? And I said, because she was involved in a very fast pace in her debut in a race that completely incinerated, and she didn't even run that badly behind the incinerated pace. And now she's going 7, and the pace figures to be much slower. And she was sold at the auction back in last month. And I just wonder how good she is going to be overall. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
and I
that's
wonder
fair.
if she might be a better horse going forward in longer races where she can control on the front end in more moderate paces as opposed to a more hectic pace at 5.5.
No, that's completely fair because it's not like she's going to be controlling the pace in here.
She's not, she does. She's in a lot of trouble.
She's not
It
fast
does mean
enough.
she's run off,
Right.
and that's a bit of a concern with her. As far as Redefined, she was sold for an awful lot of money. $450,000 at the same auction, actually, that Reflexivity sold at. Well, I don't know, Sarah. She beat Galena Rush. Anna Karenina, who's a bit of a phony, but she came back and improved her by her figure 6 points. Galena Rush has now won 2 straight races. She improved 3 in her next start. And they're pretty reasonably good, older, established, like filly and mare sprinters. And she's a 3-year-old. She was 3 wide the whole way. She looked like she maybe was backing up a little bit, and she just kept on rolling. Now, I do have a concern with her. My concern with her is that she apparently bled 2 back, and that's why she ran as badly as she did, and now she has to run off Lasix. So that is a concern. But I'm going to believe that they know that situation and hopefully can deal with it, because those things go both ways. A lot of people say, oh, they need late, and it doesn't seem to matter.
Right. No, that's a fair point to bring up. I think that the Galena Rush and the Anna Karenina that she was dealing with in that particular race, I think both of those horses have gotten better since then.
Maybe. I don't know. Are we sure? Or maybe
No.
this was just a better race. I mean,
No,
it got
I'm
a
not
big
sure.
figure. It's not like it didn't get a figure that makes her a major player here. I don't know.
I kind of worry about that a little bit, but I could be completely wrong. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And, you know, this horse that ran a big figure as a 2-year-old behind American Apple. So it's not as though she didn't establish herself early in her career as being a talented horse. So I just thought she was a player in here and might be a fair enough price. It's a great race. I mean,
There's a lot of
we
players
could-
in here.
yeah, we could talk about the race for a half hour.
I could have
probably.
spent another hour on this race. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
very
this is a fun. I
competitive.
mean, I honestly don't feel that there's a single. I don't have a single horse in this race X'd out.
No.
I didn't think there was a single horse in this race that didn't merit
maybe the
a legitimate
one a little
look.
bit.
She's a little tough to make. She was
But
wide
that's
last
it.
time. She's a little hard to make. But I agree. But everyone else has legitimate merits in here. This is a super, super running of the Galway, which is out there. I'm not going to get into the discussion, the argument that took place at dinner about where things are. But Greg, Nove and the Wishing Well are there. There was a huge
Is Greg
debate among
directionally
many
challenged?
people. Ask David.
Okay.
It was a big debate. Oh, no. Greg had a lot of people that agreed with him.
All right.
But they're all wrong. Race number 8 is the Herb Molis Memorial Saratoga Special. Rhyme schemes. I love to try to beat horses like this, even though I'm rooting for my friend Norm Cassie to win. I don't know, Sarah, you want to sell me on why we're supposed to bet against this guy?
No, and I would love to find a viable alternative because I tried to find one when it came to our Tremont winner because I think that 2-year-olds can take a big step forward in their next starts, just like we saw Rhyme Schemes do when going from a 52 to a 94 buyer in this race. And I think you have to wonder how much was this horse aided by the way that Ellis Park has been playing. But when you look at the kind of number he ran in comparison to the type of company he's going to be facing today in this shorter, more compact field, even if you drop this number by 20, 30.
Well, I'm not dropping by 20 or 30, but I would say
But even
8.
if you, well, based on what he could
Don't get carried
replicate in the
away.
future, if it's much lesser than what we saw there,
Second and
there's
third
still-
horse came back a little bit lighter, but other horses have sort of confirmed it. But even if it's 2 to 6 points high, you're now talking about a 90-ish. And I don't like the other horses in this race. For instance, I didn't like the horses that Edified was running with. I didn't think that was a particularly strong race. We'll show Hall's race. I think I have Hall's race. I know it's Todd Pletcher, but we've talked about this before. The Todd Pletcher barn has poor numbers with maiden-breaking 2-year-olds in their debuts and dirt sprints coming back in their second starts. Does not suggest, and the truth is a lot of 2-year-olds that win their first race regress in their second start. A lot of horses that run mediocrely will take a step forward, but the ones that win, and I don't have any great feeling that this horse beat any particularly good horses, though Ridgewood Runners, the maiden race earlier, so maybe you can judge when that horse
maybe
runs.
if that horse runs off the screen, then you take a better look at Hall later.
I'm going to take a drink if that horse runs off the screen, and so are a lot of people who spend a lot of money on horses in that race. Big
Right.
stiff drink.
Yes. I mean, the Army Mules are doing so well, but this was kind of a workmanlike type of performance. I wasn't wowed, and the number wasn't a wow either
No.
that it came back as. So if you think that one of these other horses in the field are going to take that big step forward and you think that Rhyme Schemes is going to regress, have at it, but I couldn't make a really strong case for somebody else.
Yeah, and my idea is to play exactas, the 6, the 2, and 3, frankly. I'll let you talk about Woodcourt because you have that one third, and I'll see if second, and I'll see if I have anything to add.
I mean, this is one that does just have a little bit more experience than the others, having those 2 starts like Rhyme Schemes does as well, and really improved second time out to get the win at 19-1. And this is a horse that faced a pretty good one, seemingly on debut in American Rascal. So I just feel as though this is a horse that the field that this one was in probably looks a little bit better than some of the other horses so
Also
far.
a private purchase, and no disrespect to the former trainer, but I think the world of Brendan Walsh trains his horse, and it's a private purchase, and an interesting private purchase here. And I agree, I think this race may be much better. The second horse improved 13 buyer points, winning the next start, sort of moves this figure into the same sort of area that the second, the 4 and 5 have run in their races. And, you know, even though I was accused by one of the owners of never picking their horses, I could have picked this one, and I hope third's enough for you. Market Street. I took Market Street second. I was on the fence, to be honest with you. I could have either one. I sort of flipped a coin. Wayne Lucas's horses, and especially his 2-year-olds, are running, and they're improving. And this horse didn't run that badly chasing the pace last time out off the maiden win, and I was just feeling like if anybody seems to surprise in these races, sometimes it's Wayne. You know, we see
been
him
having
move
a
up.
tremendous
It's got a
season
lot
with
of
his
history
2-year-olds.
doing it. I thought about that horse that beat that first-time starter of Napoleon
Steele?
Fletcher. I mean, I can't. They ran an 88 buyer. You run a 2-year-old first-time starter, run an 88 buyer up here and lose. You want to, you know, I mean, it's good because at least you know you've got a good horse. But especially, I mean, personally, I would run. If you were going to run that horse in the Hopeful, if it won, I would still run the Hopeful
Yeah.
because he ran a winning race.
No,
He just
absolutely.
happened, and I just feel like Wayne's horses are the ones that seem to jump up.
And they are kind of making those progressive moves forward. The thing that I was a little bit suspect of with this one. I don't like when horses debut and then they take that little bit of a step backward. I know it was the Sanford and this horse was in chase mode, but I don't like when they debut with a fairly average 63 and then they drop a little bit.
Well, except if you look at Time From US, the horse actually ran better because of the pace. So there are more than one way. There's more than one way to skin a cat. But I hear you. But I also think that very often, and I think there's been a lot of discussion which has missed this, so I'm going to make this point over and over again. A lot of times 2-year-olds, when their debuts, and they take a step back in their second start, and then they run better in their third start. You know, there's a horse that a lot of people think is the best 3-year-old in the country. Then his one bad race in his career was his second start, and that's Forte. So it happens a lot. And so I'm never that surprised, and I'm willing to forgive it when it happens. And I think we saw it happen in the Schuylerville. We saw it happen because that horse was ready to run first time out, and all the others took steps back. And then in her second start, she took a massive step back. Now, whether or not she takes one in her third start, we'll see. But I think that happens quite a bit. It's not always, and quite often isn't, especially with 2-year-olds, the race they take a step forward. And a lot of times the second start or the third start is when you really start to separate the good horses from the sort of phonies that were good. Because how many horses have we seen run huge race in their first start, and then you look at them 8 races later and you go, what the heck happened?
Yep.
You know?
Oh, we see it all the time.
And I think it's the hardest thing for a lot of trainers.
And I think you can see it both ways, too, because sometimes those horses that debut, you're like, there's nothing here. And then over time, we see a different animal. So
a lot of times that's the best way to go, to be honest. That's why Mage is so impressive. I mean, he's
just
never
been good from
run
the
a bad race after winning his debut and always being in against killers. The 4-star Dave, 4-star Dave was before your time, but man, I'm going to tell you, he was a phenomenon, legitimate phenomenon. And I mean, Richie rode him quite a bit. I saw him win as a 2-year-old in the Empire. He was an old 2-year-old New York
because you're 72.
Because I'm 72. I only acted. But anyway, we love 4-star Dave. We're excited to have the race, our Grade 1. Let's talk about the Kelso and the first 3 finishers, and you have them in a different order than I would have them in.
I do, and I mean, I think that the case can be made that we were all a little bit surprised by the sort of trip that Annapolis had, because he was sitting a little bit further back than Casa Creed, and especially you can see it here going into the turn that he had lesser position going into the final stages of this race. But I think overall we've seen Annapolis get very lucky with some of the trips that he had, and I think
fortunate, I would say.
And today, well, this day, it was not the case.
Right. You have the 7 ahead of him, and that's Ice Chocolate.
This was a horse that was also not benefited by the start of this race, was bumped around a little bit and ends up having some traffic trouble in the running of this race. He had to wait in behind horses, and I thought he was finishing up pretty well. Liked him for a little bit of an outside look in here. I know that he's not necessarily as competitive as the top 2, at least so far in his career, but I think I could make a legitimate excuse for the sort of trip that he had last time, and perhaps he's improving a little bit.
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay.
He was put in tight in the start, but so was Annapolis, and I think a lot of us, including me, kind of missed that. And I don't think it was, I'm sure it's a ride that Irad would like to have back, but I don't know if it was as much Irad's fault as a lot of us initially thought. Because I think the trouble that definitely, I would say, arguably hurt Ice Chocolate more, but it didn't really, because Annapolis was a much more likely winner of the race. And so it compromised his winning chances because it put him behind. And I think Irad's going to be determined not to let that happen again. And I think I look at the race and I say, well, Annapolis, whether you like him or not, was 4-5 last time, and Casa Creed was 2 1/4 to 1. And now Casa Creed's going to be favored.